r/AskReddit. Kids born to teen moms, how different is your life compared to other kids? My mother resented me and the freedom I had as a teen and young adult. I got to do and experience so many things she didn't get to by choice. On her side, I come from a long line of teen moms, but I didn't make that mistake. I was 27 when my daughter was born. And my daughter is almost 22 and no kids yet, so the cycle is broken on our branch at least. Jesus Christ dude, you hit the nail on the head with this one. My mother never wanted me to succeed out of pure jealousy, and would sometimes go to great extents to stop me from succeeding at something. On the flip side, my mum thought I spent too much of my late teens and early 20s at home with my boyfriend, now husband over 10 years later, instead of going out drinking and clubbing every weekend like young people are supposed to do. When friends would come over for the first time growing up, I'd get a lot of, "I didn't know you had an older sister." I don't. That's my mother. Also, since my mom and I are only 16 years apart, we ended up liking a lot of the same music, which made going to concerts a lot easier because we'd often want to go to the same shows. So, I've definitely seen a lot more bands than friends. My mom was 16 and my dad 19 when they had me. They took me to a lot of concerts, music festivals growing up. Starting around age 9, their go-to birthday present for me was concerts. The first couple years it was stuff they liked. After I started developing my own tween/teen tastes, they'd give me 3 tickets so I could take a friend and my uncle as chaperone. I was 20 when I had my daughter and people often asked if we were sisters. My daughter was always horrified when people assumed we were sisters. When she started 3rd grade we had just moved, so she was in a new school. She came home a couple days into the school year declaring that I had to start dressing like an old person, because then maybe people wouldn't assume we were sisters. We laugh about it a lot now, many years later. My mom and I are really close. She had me at 14. Growing up, I noticed a lot of my friends didn't get along with their moms. I always thought she was really relatable. We go eat, go shopping, get coffee, gossip, just hang out. She worked a lot, sometimes multiple jobs at once, so I felt like I did less extracurricular than my friends. But I was pretty happy growing up. She is always concerned with money. I'm starting to notice that she's not very good at saving money or planning retirement and whatnot. I once asked a family friend, now that us kids are grown, how are my parents still living paycheck to paycheck? She explained that, in her opinion, my mom basically skipped learning how to take care of herself as an adult. Instead of learning how to effectively adult, she focused on taking care of her kids. I will forever be grateful for my mom and the hard work and sacrifices she endured to raise me and my siblings. I agree with this on one side. My mom was a teen mom, but we aren't super close. Not close enough to confide in her. She was always working, so I was always taking care of my younger siblings while she was away. I ended up getting married and having my son when I was 17. He and I are really close. We have great communication, and he has no problem coming and asking me for advice, which I'm so grateful for. Working to break the cycle, and so far so good. Wait, so your mom became a grandma in her late 30s? Not judging at all, I'm in my 30s and it just blows my mind a little bit. Yeah, I had a coworker who was Hispanic and her oldest son was 22, she was 36, and he had a kid that was 4. I think her mom was in her 50s and her grandma was still kicking around in her 70s. So that's 5 generations in less than 80 years. Parents still trying to grow up and learn life lessons 10 years later because they never really had the chance to while raising you. It's kinda cool though, cause then, if you're aware enough you also pick up on it. My parents weren't teenagers when they had me and my sister, but they were not ready to be parents. It's wild now that I'm a grown-ass adult and my dad now has a 5-year-old. Now that he's ready and in a great relationship, he's doing a fantastic job. Sometimes I'm sad that my little brother is gonna have a relationship that I'll never get, but conversely I'll get to be someone for him that I never had, so it'll all work out. Is it weird to be an adult with a young sibling? I had my son at 19, didn't have any more kids for reasons, but I'm still young enough we could. As an adult with a bunch of younger siblings, it's honestly not too weird, although I don't live with them. It is a fun fact to bring up when having conversation though. Mom was 15 when she had me. Honestly, my life sucked. She used to say that she could have given me up for adoption and then decided not to because she realized that I would love her unconditionally, no matter what. Our relationship progressed pretty negatively because of that mindset of hers. Every negative thing I did was against what she thought motherhood would be like. I was something she could pick up and put down and leave behind at her leisure. There were a number of times she'd drop me off at a family member's house and disappear. Once, I came home from kindergarten and no one was there. Dad was in prison. The next morning, my uncle showed up. He had heard my mom left and had a gut feeling he needed to go to my house. There was no food and the heat had been turned off by the utility company. I don't remember much about that time other than the peanut butter and jelly sandwiches in the Demolition Man movie. She had pretty bad trauma and never processed it properly, so when she got angry due to a trauma reminder, she got really angry. When she was good, boy she was golden. She could be the most fun of a person you could ask for, but she wasn't a mother. She never held and comforted, she expected hugs and comfort. She was a kid and thought with a kid brain. When we had some spare change, she'd walk me to the ice cream place and she'd buy herself an ice cream and we'd go back home. As I got older, our already weird relationship became weirder. She told me she didn't want people to know she was my mom and I could introduce her as my sister. She would tell people that she had 3 children, my siblings, and not claim me because people would do the math. She wanted to be friends with my friends. She wanted to hang around when they were there. What I know about having a teenage mom is this: I loved her with the kind of fanatical worship that messed me up for a long time. She could be funny and cruel at the same time. When she gave you attention, your world would be brighter, but when she was mad at you, the world would be dark. She never grew out of her teenage mindset, and I had to come to grips with that. I can't say that every teenage mom is like mine, but mine was rough. One of my friends has a teen mom. She doesn't talk about it too much, but she says that it's nice how all family members, great-grandparents, are still alive. Ideally, they should have the advantage of multiple caregivers. I would think with everyone still so young, everyone is still working versus having older retired grandparents. This tends to be the case. I work at an OB/gyn clinic and young mothers often have no family to help out because even their grandparents are still working. It's a huge problem passed down through generations because the kids usually don't have enough positive adult contact/mentoring in their lives because everyone is working their asses off to avoid the same mistake. I went to school with a girl who had her first child at 14. She had 2 more before graduation. At the age of 28 she became a grandmother. The child-born's great-great-great-grandmother was alive and only 82. If she lives until 96, she can meet her great-great-great-great-grandkid. I feel like that's approaching some human record. My mother resented me. Still does actually, but it's lessened over the years. It was apparently my fault she missed her teen years, so she dropped me off at a relative's in another state when I was a toddler and hitchhiked around the country for a year. As I grew up I was screamed at and beaten for looking like my biological father. She didn't trust me a bit because of it. I had to get permission to step outside to get the mail, couldn't bathe myself until I was a teenager, couldn't do homework with others. I don't think it has ever occurred to her I'm not guilty of anything. But in her eyes, being my father's daughter is enough. I'm a mom and this pains me to read. You were a beautiful baby and you weren't guilty. She didn't rise up to meet you. I'm sorry. My parents got married when they found out my mom was pregnant at 16. She had me her senior year at 17, and both still managed to work their way through college with me in tow. It was honestly pretty annoying. They liked to party a lot with their friends, which got annoying quick, having a bunch of 30-somethings getting drunk and listening to loud music when I had to be up early. My mom enjoyed the attention of being mistaken for my sister, but it felt gross because she was the hot mom to all my guy friends growing up, and I never heard the end of it. My dad wasn't really interested in doing dad things until they had my sister in their mid-20s. Found out a year ago thanks to 23andMe that my dad's not my biological father. Apparently my mom slept around a lot in high school. Found my bio dad, which uncovered a huge conspiracy of lies and batshit insanity that honestly deserves its own post. Teenagers are ducking stupid. Since people are asking, here's a summary of how upside down my life has turned over the past year and a half. I gave my dad a 23andMe kit for Christmas in 2018 and got one for myself too. I've always loved genealogy. Results came in by January 2019, and when I tried to connect with my dad's account, discovered we had no DNA in common. Well, at 31 years old, you could say I was pretty shell-shocked. I already had an estranged relationship with my mother at the time, but I immediately called her up that night to demand answers. She kept trying to lie until I revealed the results of the test. Then, in a desperate need to be in control, she refused to give me a name and hung up. She called back an hour later and gave me his name, but the emotional damage was done. We haven't spoken since. Saba stalked my bio dad for a few weeks, and he seemed like the kind of dad you'd make up to impress your friends on the playground. Air Force to cop, then went to jail for weapons dealing, then became a university professor in sociology, then a private consultant who also owned a massive paintball field. This dude seemed too incredible to believe, but I collected a ton of info, and this guy was legit. It's amazing what info you can find about people on the internet, especially if you're willing to pay a few bucks for government records. He reached out to me a few weeks later. Apparently my mom told him I now knew the truth. He said he'd been waiting for this day my whole life. I had assumed either this dude didn't know I existed or never cared, considering he'd lived in the same small town I grew up in, so I was pretty flawed. The whole story took several weeks to tell, and I interviewed other people who knew to corroborate the story, including the most uncomfortable conversation with my dad I've ever had. I still have the audio from the conversations I recorded. Apparently, my mother was literally never monogamous. She was always sleeping with multiple guys, including when she was married to my dad. They divorced several years ago due to, shocker, infidelity. Not only that, but my mom knew this other guy was my bio father the whole time. She kept a weird Brett Kavanaugh style calendar with the guy she slept with written on the dates. Not only that, but she had an affair with him throughout the time I was in middle school. Apparently I even met him once, though I don't remember it. She would take my sister and me to the park to play, so she could meet with him. She used access to me to dangle in front of him, so he'd give her money and attention. He went to jail for 3 years, non-violent, another long story, and, when he got out, when I was in high school, she totally shut him out, shut out access to me, and, when he started saying he would fight for a paternity test, she told him she'd already done one and I wasn't his. He, stupidly, in my opinion, since all she ever does is lie, believed her, tried to pick up the broken pieces of his life, and moved on. Then surprise, surprise, gets a phone call out of the blue January 2019 where it turns out, ops, my bitch mom lied to him, and I really am his. So, needless to say there were many lost years. My dad is still my dad, and I don't talk to my mom anymore, but I'm trying to have what constitutes as a relationship with my bio dad too. It's just been hard having such a huge mental adjustment in what you thought your life was like growing up, and now seeing it through different eyes. Therapy helps, I've found, but it's still a huge ducked up mess. There's still a ton I'm leaving out, like anonymous birthday cards I got in high school, that were a huge mystery to me growing up. Turns out they were from him, but this has already gotten super long, and stretching the limits of believability. I was born in 1964 when my mother was 16. Grandparents adopted me so I'd have a name. Father's family paid for the hospital bills, and that was it, because they didn't want to ruin his chances to go to VMI. Mother had 3 other kids from at least 2 other men, and tried to treat me like a little sister, although a girl in 3rd grade decided it was her duty to tell me I didn't really have a daddy. 3-bedroom country farm with 4 kids, grandparents, and mother with her husband was a constant fight, complete with fists and screaming almost daily. At least we could go outside. Lost a brother to a gunshot when stepfather cheated on mother and left gun down while he was leaving. Other brother accidentally shot him. Mother continued to treat me like a sister until she decided she wanted to be a mother. My grandmother was the one who raised me and the one I consider my true mother. When she died, she left me the land with her house on it, and my mother tricked me into signing it over to her. I was very naive. She accused my straight-edge gothy kids, in their 30s now, of being on drugs because they wore black, and has held a remark one made about moving away when I was 16 against me to this day. My father sent me $50 when I graduated and $100 when I got married the first time. And I had no idea he was even my father until I was 23. I would have liked to have had a different childhood. I was primarily raised by my grandparents after age 5 because my mom couldn't handle the responsibility and my dad wanted nothing to do with us. She neglected me, literally played World of Warcraft, and slept all hours of the day. There were times when I'd miss school because she wouldn't get up, or I would have to eat uncooked frozen waffles because I was so hungry. I had to grow up really quickly because of that. When my grandparents moved us in it was better, but she always acted more like a sibling. When she lived with us, she would argue with me and steal my things and go on and on about how everyone thinks she's my sister and not my mom. She tried to squeeze some more youth into her life when I was young, always partying and drinking and coming home ducked up. She constantly brought me around her trash boyfriends, including a stalker, a man who is now white supremacist, and a man who got convicted of sexually assaulting his ex-stepdaughter who was the same age as me during their relationship. By the time I was 10 I was already significantly more mature than her. She resents me for that, as well as my intelligence and academic success and the fact that I'm happy when she never got to be, despite her best efforts to duck me up psychologically. I get to live my life and she never did. She started doing drugs at some point in there, not sure when, but she stopped and got her life together when she got pregnant with my little brother. Didn't last long. She's in rehab now, and my little brother is a victim to the same circumstances that I was. She hasn't grown at all. Having me at a young age must have stunted her growth or something, because she's the most immature person I know. She tried to make it all up to me when I was 18 by taking me on a trip to Europe, but she ended up losing my passport and then left without me while I had to figure out how to return to the US all by myself. Goes to show how little changed. My whole childhood I felt like an outsider because of her. I'm from a middle-class suburb with more nuclear families than not, so everyone treated me like some alien. That, or they'd look at me like I was a heartless bitch if I said I don't celebrate Mother's Day, or if I couldn't remember her birthday. I could sense the caution people used around me, like I was covered in cracks, and would shatter instantly if someone even looked at me funny. That definitely affected the way I treated myself for a while. In actuality though I was mostly fine. I was insecure and struggled with some abandonment sensitivity, but aside from that I was pretty happy. My grandparents are amazing people, and they always did the best they could to encourage and support me when I was young. I never felt unloved or unwanted, just frustrated I had no chance at a normal life. I never realized how little those things matter once you get past high school though, how unimportant normalcy is. I realize now I'm better off having gone through all that at a young age. I had to be mature enough for both my mom and myself. I struggle with anxiety, but it's mostly internal. Nothing outside of that ever really phases me. I know I will never be like her, and I know my success will only spite her more, and that serves to motivate me. I love who I'm now, and I know I wouldn't be this way if she hadn't fumbled so hard.